What?
We're waiting.
For what?
You know, your beatboxing thing?
Well, I'd never.
Well, it seems like we're lacking a sound stinger for our intro, so let's get straight to the point. It's finally time to talk all things xylophone on... Finally time... on today's episode of Music Arcade? I'm probably gonna end up mixing that in to the main guitar intro. Yeah, I like that a lot. A guitar intro I've been trying to find a reason to replace for like a year now, but you know.
Welcome to my temporary logo's struggle.
Yeah. Are we anywhere? Okay, never mind. I'm not gonna start talking business. Anyway, let's actually do the episode now.
Not now, but we have this in mind. Anyway, I am going to put those xylophone hammers away from me unless the entire podcast is marred with randomly.
Yeah, let's not do that.
Excellent. And let us talk about the xylophone instead.
Sounds good. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Music Arcade Podcast. I'm Galen, the Sound Guy Firestone.
Oh yes, I'm Oracle, that's right.
And I'm Eddie, and we're introducing today's xylophone, the Cursebreaker.
We're also introducing ourselves because you did it anyway with your hand, didn't you, Rana?
I certainly did, which is why I'm putting the entire xylophone away.
That's also probably smart. You know what? No. Keep it around. It could be good for a joke.
Fine.
Anyway, I would like to start by saying we apparently didn't introduce ourselves last week, so sorry about that, question mark?
Apologies if you were lost. Last week I was still Wanacle, but that still deserves clarification, just in case.
Just in case.
I'm not sure I was still Eddie, but you know, just in case, let's go with it.
Let's go with it.
Who can be?
So, we are finally talking about xylophones.
This isn't July anymore, is it?
No, this is not July. This is November. That's how long this has been going on.
That can is looking a little dented, but it's safe now.
It's been kicked very, very hard, very, very far afield.
Just by circumstances.
Yeah, so this is our second Wheel of Instruments episode. We put a bunch of instruments in the wheel, and xylophone was the one that was picked. Now, I have a bit of a story to tell.
You put it in there, too.
I'm sorry?
You were the one that put it on the wheel, too.
I did?
If I remember.
I don't remember this at all. I will talk about the one I do remember putting on there. So, when we were doing this, I was in a particularly bad mood for no reason that I could actually remember at the time, and I put a poison pill on the list, namely baritone saxophone. This is kind of an obscure instrument, and I threw it on there just to flex my own brain, which is not healthy or good, and I would like to apologize to the both of you for that very petty move.
I have a correction, actually.
Okay.
Because I have done the search, and I now have your nomination post, which nominated tubular belt, xylophone, and baritone saxophone indeed. With the added note, deliberately chosen because I am a sadist and want to see you to scrum good luck.
Yes.
The retraction part is that this post was from the 26th of June.
Okay, so apparently I decided this in June, not July. Great. Either way, I found myself in kind of a unique circumstance as a result of that. So, when I started doing research for this episode, I found myself a bit flummoxed because I apparently don't listen to a whole lot of music with mallet-struck percussion instruments in here. Mallet-struck melodic percussion instruments even, which is also relevant because if it was just mallet-struck, that would include, like, timpani drums.
You would have picked 3 piano pieces, wouldn't you?
Those aren't mallet-struck. Those are finger-struck.
Yeah, but that activates a mallet on a string.
It does, but that's kind of a technicality. I could argue harpsichord at that point as well. Almost.
Absolutely. I believe harpsichords are plucked.
They are. Again, we're getting into the minutiae of the mechanics, and that was not really the point.
Yeah.
What I did find was that I didn't listen to a whole lot of music with a xylophone in it, and this episode flummoxed me to no small end, leading to an interesting result, and that is I found way more Barry sax than I found xylophone over the course of my playlist. Including my favorite
by your own wooden petard.
Yeah, including my single favorite song off the Yakuza Kiwami 1 soundtrack, which features baritone sax very heavily. Leaving me in a very strange position where all of a sudden, like, I'm dreading this xylophone, totally normal instrument episode, and I'm really looking forward to a future hypothetical baritone sax episode. That's the irony of this whole thing now. Now it would be a legitimate pick
rules
because
against second entries on the Wheel of Instruments.
Yeah, now all of a sudden it's a legitimate pick.
My journey for this episode was a weird roller coaster ride because when you gave that instrument, I remember thinking, "Oh God, I don't have a pick for any of Galen's suggestions. I am screwed." Then xylophone went through, and I went, "Yes, I am screwed." And then 2023 happened, and we kicked the can for a while because Galen and I were almost ripping our own brains off.
Yeah.
And eventually we came back, and I decided, okay, ChatGPT, be my wingman. And out of everything ChatGPT gave me, which there was a lot of cool stuff there, I ended up picking only one of them. Anyway.
ChatGPT, you AI'd this?
Look, I did stop to listen to the music and form my own opinions, and I did blacklist like 99% of what ChatGPT listed.
Well, I mean,
but
that's
that
better than
was my wingman.
That's better than those lawyers in somewhere that tried to use ChatGPT to write a legal brief and got absolutely shellacked by the judge.
That was a fun one.
That was a fun one.
I do want to note a fun little thing because I think 3 times ChatGPT tried to convince me that a song with steel drums was also counted as being a song with instruments from the xylophone family.
You know what?
Good job.
Given, if you're talking about the melodic steel drums, I think I would have accepted that. If you're talking about like
no idea,
the Jamaican ones, but still mallet struck a melodic, I think I would have been okay with that.
I think
it is a bit of a stretch, but it's at the limit of what I consider acceptable, but it's on the right side of the limit, I would say.
Yeah.
And we will talk about that limit with some of those picks later on.
Yeah, one of mine is like 80% harp, and you really have to listen for the instruments in question, but...
Yes, indeed.
They are definitely present.
One of mine isn't even in the game. You just hear the xylophone on the official arrangement that's available on the soundtrack album.
And my picks were great and featured a lot of xylophone and xylophone-adjacent instruments. Thank you for asking.
Hey, I did it, okay? I got the xylophones and xylophone-like instruments in there. Again, you have to really listen for one of them, but it is all over the harmony line, not the melody.
Then let's talk about the individual picks, shall we?
Let's do it. Track number 1.
Endless Legend. A game I've talked about before and haven't really played since because I suck at it. But the track is called A Volcanic Paradise. It wasn't in the base game. Must have been from a DLC. I can only imagine they are themed after Hawaii or something like that because boy, is this a Hawaiian vibe.
Hard disagree. Source, someone who lives here.
Yeah, no, it doesn't come off as Hawaiian to me. It comes off as a very jungle theme, which is weird given what I do know on the actual contents of that DLC.
I actually got like a cave vibe from this one.
Which is closer to what it actually is, actually. That's a lot of actually in one sentence.
That is a lot of actually in one sentence, yes. Anyway, please continue.
But yeah, this apparently it's the thing to a civilization called the Kapaku. I'm guessing is how you're meant to pronounce it. Incidentally, while we're at it, shout out to the composer. Last time we talked about him, he used a pseudonym, Fly by Numbers, or pretend out as Fly by No. He now goes by his, I assume, real name of Arnaud Roy, which is French, and I just butchered all of that. But you know, that's me. But yeah, like in the middle of the search for songs for this episode, I kind of had those moments in cartoons where a lamp lights up above your head, and I went, wait a minute, Endless Legend has a lot of, you know, vibey stuff, and that's usually how people use xylophones in soundtracks. Let's check that one out, and here we are. It's like really fun and pleasing sound, I'd say. A very fun melody.
Yeah, and it makes sense for this game, given that it's a civ like a fantasy civilization, like, but it places this heavy emphasis on how different the playable factions are from each other.
Yes. And it's also generally slower paced, so these vibey songs fit much better.
Yeah.
So is this like a 4X type of deal, or more of a real-time strategy?
It's a 4X.
Okay.
It is absolutely a 4X. And for this one in particular, what I have in my note is that it remains thematically a strange one, given the fact that it's a volcanic paradise, as suggested by the title. The Kapaku are actually tiny people from outer space that use enormous golems to do the heavy lifting, but otherwise are they find all this greenery and these lush woodlands absolutely revolting, and seek to return it to a more tolerable volcanic hellscape because it suits them better. And so you have this volcanic texture to it with those wooden instruments. And for a lot of tracks we're going to see coming up, the xylophone is used for the forest, the woodland sounds. And for this one, I thought it weird given the emphasis on doing the opposite of that, but I believe it actually is more meant to represent, like I said, the differences of status between the small Kapakus and the big golems, thus why there are also some big contrasting drums here and there in the track. And it's more like the not power balance, but size balance that's emphasized in this theme. To me,
I can see that. Like, I wanted to keep this observation for a later track, but might as well bring it up now. The xylophone, at least to me, it does sometimes have an association with the idea of being either small or delicate, because of cartoons like Tom and Jerry and Looney Tunes, where it was often used in sort of chase sequences, let's say, or when a character was trying to sneak around.
In Tom and Jerry, you would associate a xylophone sound to Jerry and another bigger percussion, or like a trumpet or something to Tom.
Right.
Or you'd hear maybe a xylophone when Tom is trying to sneak around the dog. It also happens sometimes. So my mind kind of has that association because I watched that a lot when I was a child.
Same.
Yeah, it's weird. Just because of how many games I played, the actual xylophone, like specifically, without significant accompaniment, just my brain goes straight to Ice Cave. It's really weird that I couldn't find a single track that was a representative of this. This might be a Mandela effect, but that's just where my brain goes. It's usually xylophone or some kind of chimes.
Yeah, I can see that because of like how crystalline it can be.
Yeah.
Crystalline adjacent. Yeah.
And the xylophone...
I think it's also that it has a bit of an echo, even if you don't add reverb in post.
Oh yeah, it is a verby instrument.
Yeah, I can't speak for you guys, but I've been to a cave once as a child because my mom was a geography teacher and brought me along, and I can definitely see how easy it is to associate an echoey instrument to an echoey environment such as an actual cave.
Mm-hmm. And let me tell you, as someone who used to play this, if you have, like, these are sensitive instruments. It is very easy to hit this too hard and just overpower anything you're trying to accomplish. Which is kind of amazing that it's almost always used for harmony, given how beefy it is as an instrument, just sonically.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, like, contrasting in that regard, and you'd think you would hear more people use it as a lead instrument because it does sound very unique, but much like the triangle, it just sort of stays in the background.
Honestly, I had never seen a xylophone in person, so that information is kind of new to me. I figured it was more sensitive than, say, a piano or whatever.
Oh yeah,
I didn't realize it was to that level, and that I don't know.
Well,
my
part of
mind
it
is...
though depends on, I would say, the kind of member of the xylophone family of instrument that it is. Some are a little bit less reverby than a full-on marimba, for instance.
Yeah, some are
fair.
less reverby, but it's also the sonic, like, it's also the frequency of it. It will cut through just about anything as well. That's one of the reasons why I always yell at people when they over-mic cymbals or they over-mic triangle. Same kind of concept. It's just this very loud, high-pitched thing that just cuts through, and I have to, like, really beat the crap out of the dynamics on it in order to get it back to a listenable state. Imagine making that mistake live. Couldn't be me, but,
Oof.
it's so easy to make. You need very steady hands on these. So hearing something like this, which there's a lot of it interplaying around, it's either a very good sample or, as we'll see with another one of, I believe, Rana's picks, very, very... was it Rana's picks? Were you the one who did the studio one? The Trials of Mana?
Yes.
Yeah. We're either going... Yeah. That one's a case where you have some very, like... You could see them be super careful while playing.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we probably need to stay. So something like this, which is a lot of interplay, is, if it's not sampled, very technically impressive. Because, again, it's a lot more sensitive of an instrument than you would give it credit for.
Yeah, I have to say, like, this new information is making me wonder if our cultural association, like I and Rana were talking about with, say, cartoons, this association between the xylophone sound and more delicate things comes from the composer's knowledge that the players who go on the xylophone have to be delicate as well. So I wonder if that's where the correlation comes from.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't thought of that. Maybe. I think it's part that...
Me being, yeah, it might just be me being me and overthinking things, but that's what I do.
No, that's very possible. There's also the rather obnoxious must play by symphony rules that anything in the percussion section must be less present. Never mind that some of my favorite songs break these rules loudly.
I'll just point to the use of actual chains in the Lord of the Rings soundtrack where they sound amazing.
Yeah.
But technically, there would be percussion.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely stuff like that going on as well. So it's like you spend a lifetime like, oh, symphony bells have to be played super quiet because they're percussion and they must be percussion and can never take lead in anything. How dare you go against tradition? And that just sticks in the cultural mind.
Could be.
I feel like we've gotten far afield of the song, but I feel like what we're talking about is relevant to the instrument and the topic at hand, so I'm not too angry about it.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
I think
That's
we're kind of
general consideration for the xylophone.
yeah, we may have gone a little far from the song, but I think we're still kind of dancing around the core idea of it was very easy to screw this one up, but they didn't. So kudos to them.
Yeah.
Which is a fair take on the song as well.
Yeah.
It's not every day, probably because of the reasons you just mentioned, but it's not every day that we hear a song where the percussion is the core of the melody. And here it is, and it sounds amazing.
Yes. Absolutely. Can confirm. And with that, let's go on to Meruru? Atelier Meruru. That's definitely one of Rana's.
That is absolutely one of mine. Yep. And especially it is Forest Dance, which is appropriately situated in the forest nearby the capital of Arles. And they went with a track that has some interesting uses of the instrument.
It's very cute.
Uses plural, because there's two main uses of those sort of percussions. And the first one is kinda naturalistic in nature. It's almost imitating woodland creatures out of sight, going with just some small notes of color here and there, still in tune with the song instead of being completely disconnected from it and doing their own thing, but it still has this idea of not quite an atmospheric track because it's much too present and much too elaborate for that, but almost as if the song was played inside of an open outside environment instead of in your headphones because you're playing a video game.
And go on.
No, I was gonna go to the second use, so now is a good time for interjection, I'd say.
No, actually, my comments about the whole song, not really the use of the instrument at this point in time, so by all means, continue.
Then, I will say that after a while, at the, I'd say, part where the song kind of flies off, we have a xylophone used more as kind of underlining the almost childishness and innocence of the situation. This is not a scary forest. It's not a terrifying environment. It has a worryless tone to it. It's light-hearted.
Yeah.
And there it supports that because the xylophone does have this kind of child-friendly nature to it. We've mentioned that with Tom and Jerry as an example, or with the fact that I played some xylophone pretty sure when I was little, because it's a cheap thing that's there and with very distinct, definite notes, so it's got that child association. And what do rich children with a nearby forest do? They're going to explore and go on fun little adventures. And that has that vibe to it as well.
Yeah, this is a very safe-sounding song. I said in my notes that it sounds like it has generic town energy.
Yeah, a bit. It has this kind of circular nature in its wind instrument melody. And it gives the vibe that the scariest things you're going to find out there are slimes and squirrels, which is exactly what happens.
It kind of surprised me to hear you say it plays in a forest, because I do, when I listen to this, I do envision sort of not necessarily the smallest of villages, but one of those small JRPG villages where everything is green, but it's an opening, and sort of open, summery area, but not at the beach, like a opening near a forest or something, which kind of made me think of the Suikoden franchise, to be honest, like a more high fidelity song that would fit in a Suikoden village if Suikoden soundtracks didn't use sound fonts that sounded like crap.
We're going to talk about that later.
Nice.
That is actually a conversation piece.
We will.
In fact, you know what? I'm just going to say it. There's a later song. There's going to be 2 versions of the song, and the first one I flat out said, this sounds like a Konami sound font.
Yeah, and that was a pretty good catch, too. But back to this one. I can see, I think by itself, I really can see that now that you say it, and I guess I didn't see it because I know that the actual small town song there's 2 things. One is that it's already more just because it's very an anime inspired game. It's very vivid like that.
Right.
It doesn't do atmospheric and ambient. And on top of that, given that the main drive of the game is to make your hometown grow and thrive and expand, by the time you have turned your small town into more of a large city with antennas and military posts, the forest which remains mostly unchanged, save for one time where low-quality herbs invade and stifle the other plants, become a little bit of a quiet haven, which does have that small town vibe. It's just a small town without the town, I guess.
That's fair. That is very fair.
But yeah, I mainly picked that because I found interesting the 2 uses of the percussion that are pretty different but help complementing each other to paint that picture.
No, I get it. Like, the xylophone was very present. It was used very nicely. It wasn't overpowering. Again, you're going to hear me say this a lot because it tends to be when used wrong. Yeah.
And, like, it's a wooden instrument. It makes sense to use it in a place full of wood. Like the forest, full of all of your wood needs. In any case, how about we move on to Sakuraba track that I didn't pick? Kalen.
Okay, so I will be honest with you. This pick came to me a couple of days ago. I had months to prepare this episode, and the day we were originally going to record it, I realized that I actually had a better pick. The thing is, my brain has been very inaccurate in terms of what instruments were played where, which was part of the problem here. A lot of cases where things I thought were mallet struck ended up being piano, or ended up being, in this case, a lot of harp. However, that one gets an asterisk. Or in one outright case, ends up being just pure synth with no analog. In this case, however, while the main line I did misremember, I thought it was Meruru the whole time. No, it's clearly harp. It's super, super, super harp. When I actually listened to the song closely, I'm like, wait, there's something here. And then I realized if you don't listen to the harp, there is a ton of bells, xylophone, marimba, chimes, tubular bells, basically any kind of melodic percussion instrument except Jamaican steel drum is going on in the background of the song. So I wanted to...
It gives it a very sparkly texture to it.
It does, and that is something that's very clear about the Valkyrie Profile 2 Silmeria soundtrack. This is Meditation of Many Years, the song from the Water Temple. I forget what it's called. It's been many years since It's been a meditation of many years since I played this video game.
Same.
But this particular song always kind of stuck out in my memory for just how textured it is. And I hate to be the guy, but like the joke around this podcast, the meme around this podcast is, remember when Sakuraba used to be good? This is when he was good, right here.
This is a good one.
This is a good one.
It's just so layered and so fluid.
It is. And a lot of those layers...
Oh, go on.
A lot of those layers are the instruments in question. You have a lot of cases where marimba follows the melody line underneath the harp. It's a little hard to hear, but it's very present. You have to be actively listening for it, but that's almost kind of the beauty of it. Like, if you're going to use this instrument in harmony, he's using it in harmony and is not messing around. You have the xylophone come in and out, occasionally playing an excerpt from the main theme of the game during this song, which I think is relevant.
It's so weird in that it's a song that it's got the energy of an ambient track while being so much more elaborate and deliberate.
Uh-huh.
To me, very fittingly, it sounded very introspective.
Yes.
How I describe this. It's like, it is very soft and calm, and there are many layers, and like Rana mentioned, it sounds a bit sparkly, but at the same time, it has some instruments that, generally speaking, add a little bit of an ominous vibe, like tubular bells.
Mm-hmm.
So it even has tubular bells on occasion, which very ominous. I imagine in part because of a sort of cultural understanding that they either relate to church or to The Exorcist or both. But here they don't overpower, and they usually do overpower in songs as well. But they don't here. They just add a little touch of ominousness in the back that makes it go from a, let's say, soft day at a park where you're just taking the sun in, to meditation, to an introspective song.
Mm-hmm.
It does a great job of layering those various elements.
Yeah, Sakuraba is not well known for subtlety, but this song is subtle.
Yeah. It's like, for once he said, alright, that's enough synth and organs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tone it down and chill for a little bit.
And that worked. It turns out he could do subtle really, really well when he tries.
Yeah. I like when he tries.
I like when he tries, too, and it's a shame the last time he tried was Dark Souls 1.
Yeah.
Which also isn't subtle,
Although
admittedly.
I think he did some nice stuff with Valkyrie Elysium, but I haven't persisted in that game yet because my computer won't.
He did okay. He did better than usual, but it's not up to his old standards.
It's not up to that standard, for sure. That's some of his best work.
Yeah, no, I would argue that the two Valkyrie Profile games are his magnum opus in terms of what he's capable of as a composer.
Yeah.
He really nailed both of them in different ways.
Absolutely.
I love talking about him in a positive light and not going like, well, he phoned in another one. That feels good. There's a reason I liked the guy once upon a time, and there's a reason I respect him to this day. It's because of soundtracks like this one. When he gets it right, he knocks it out of the park.
The sentence, "There comes another paycheck," comes to mind.
He is sadly guilty of that one a lot. Yeah, let's talk about something, on the subject of paychecks, let's talk about something for charity, maybe.
Was it for charity?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, it was for charity. It was supporting the Rainforest Trust.
Uh-huh.
And this is our percussion ensemble arrangement of Trails of Mana's Powell by Rahul Vanamali and Sean Hanson, with mastering by James Hoffman. We have all the informations. Love to see it.
That's always
Original
nice.
composed by Hiroki Kikuta. And it's one of probably my favorite pieces from Trails of Mana. And I think I've established I tend to like the more bombastic boss tracks and the likes, but this one just has such, like, it just walks in your field and goes, yep, I'm here, I'm amazing, enjoy. It just drags you along, and it's for like an early game forest. You go around and you meet your other party members. It's pretty early in the game, but it's incredibly memorable.
Kikuta's good at this sort of theme.
Yeah.
The sort of early game
is one of my
field,
favorites.
the sort of early game field adventure theme. Secret of Mana was very similar in that regard.
Absolutely. The Rabbit Forest is probably also one of my favorites from that game.
Yeah, this is something that he kind of specializes in, which is awesome because you don't see this very often.
Absolutely.
It
leaves an impression, and it's a good thing because, like, having amazing final boss tracks is great, except not all your players are going to reach that unless, and so your track is going to have less notoriety unless it's like literally one winged angel, in which case it's so good it overpowers the rest almost.
This was actually my biggest complaint about Nier Automata's in-game soundtrack, because while the songs themselves are excellent, the actual field theme, especially at the beginning of the game, is super muted and not really present.
Yeah, exactly, and it only gains more presence as it evolves and gets the full version.
Right.
It's like they're giving your music in shareware.
Right, whereas the first Nier Gestalt and Replicant, didn't do this. It just blasted you with Hills of Radiant Wind the second you get there, and it's glorious for it.
Oh, that is an entrance, and I think it's fair to say that they are on a different technical level for the originals, at least, but that their Powell and Hills of Radiant Winds are in the same discussions when it comes to early game areas that wow you anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you want the king of this. How about Zelda's overworld theme?
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of the gold standard for this exact thing. An early game, a thing the player is going to hear immediately that sets the tone for basically the whole soundtrack.
And even then, the Zelda one is more matching.
Yes.
Which is definitely a stranger subset, but not an unpleasant one.
Yeah, but
honestly,
I mean,
I'm just still wowed by the fact that I have now the memory of shareware software in my mind again.
Oh yeah. There's a word you haven't heard in a while, huh?
Yep.
I like layers, I like variable mixing, I've said that a lot, but I don't like it when it takes too long to get to the point in basically any circumstance. Yeah. This song doesn't do that. This song goes into it, and it sets a tone.
It's very giving like that.
It is. And let me tell you...
in particular, this arrange is decided, you know what? The xylophone is a family of instruments. Let's invade the whole family.
Yeah, there's
some friends.
Everything. There's the fancy big bell set with the damper pedal. There's several different marimba variants. There's a small little symphony bell kit. A lot is happening here.
Decade there is a glockenspiel as well. There's a lot, and given the nature of the original track, it works very well. It's an excellent choice. It's given it, the marimba in particular gives it a fullness because of how reverb heavy it is. The notes meld into each other and create this sound canopy.
Yeah, and I mentioned this during the first track, but I mentioned that players have to be subtle. You can see that so hard in this YouTube video. This is probably the video I've watched the second most out of the entire playlist for this week.
Sometimes it really feels like they have tied dynamite bars under the instrument, and if they hit it too hard, it explodes.
That is almost
I think that might be
accurate.
accurate.
Yeah.
I was gonna say for the sound guy in charge of mixing it later, that's probably accurate.
Oh yeah, no. If one of these jerks had blown out one of my mics in recording, I would have screamed. One thing I did notice, and this is just me going in full sound guy mode. I've mentioned my history with Audio-Technica as a brand a few times on and off the show, but I've noticed that the Melody Marimba in particular had an Audio-Technica mic on it. Audio-Technicas don't really last long, but they're very good at high SPL, high sound pressure level, high volume situations in the room. So I'm like, the recording engineer on this knew what they were doing by taking the loudest bell instrument here and sticking the most like SPL distortion proof mic on it. I understood exactly what the line of thinking here was. It's like, if this only lasts this recording session, great, but it's not going to blow out. So that was very good thinking. That was just one of those things that I'm like, I'm not sure it would have been my first choice. I probably would have put some Shores and an XY up there, but also I would have recognized that that would have required the player to be a little more careful than maybe they were comfortable with. Either way, yeah.
Go on.
It's just one of those recording decisions that I fully understand, fully appreciate, and it sounds pretty darn good. Like, I was fairly impressed by the resulting recording quality.
Yeah, and overall, like, it's a song whose original on the SNES I like a lot, whose arrange for Trails of Mana, the remake for the Switch, I like a lot, and this arrange, it's also very good. This song can do no wrong. Yep.
Yeah.
And before Galen takes off his sound guy hat, let's just get in character and let me put my own Latin American hat. Because
Please.
That's our roles, apparently. I particularly enjoy...
Really? I thought you were the Gotham piano guy.
Look, I'm the guy who's consistently apologetic about Latin American rhythms, right?
Go, talk. Sheesh.
But yeah, I really enjoyed not only the use of instruments that are common in Latin America, but the fact that there are syncopated rhythms pretty much everywhere in this arrangement. And that is something you hear a lot in Latin American music. I don't think they use actually claves, which are how I believe in Spanish it's how they refer to the specific Latin American rhythms.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't any claves here, but it is syncopated in a way that, to me, recalls the syncopation you hear in Latin American music a lot, and adds an extra layer to how much I enjoyed this cover. This is a really, really cool one.
If you don't mind, I'm going to put my sound guy hat back on, and we're going to have a little micro rant about traditionalism in music. This is relevant. You mentioned that there's a specific word for Latin American beats, and that just annoys me. And it annoys me for... Let me tell you something. In college, I took a music history class. And it's supposed to be the breadth of music history. You know what it really was? European music history, Western European music history from 1750 to the modern day. That's it.
Sounds about right.
Uh-huh. And everything else was considered world music.
Of course.
Wanna hear something that might make you hate the word clave even more, at least in an American context?
Oh, please!
So, clave comes from the Spanish and actually also Portuguese, but mostly it entered the English lexicon through Spanish.
Okay.
And in an American context, and probably an Anglophone context in general, it refers to Latin American rhythms, or rhythmic patterns, if you want to be more specific. But the word clave in Spanish and Portuguese means clef.
Great.
Yeah, yes.
Great.
That thing no other sound culture has.
Yeah, so basically let's take that word that means something we also have a word for, and no, that's the word for their rhythms now.
God, that's just rude! Sorry, this bothers me. There's so much to be gained from observing, from listening, from experiencing everything other than Western European music from 1750 to the modern day. And it bothers me that it's shunted off by traditionalists into their own stupid categories, almost to give them an excuse not to bother with them because they're not proper. Bite me.
Yeah, no, this kind of mix of ethnocentrism, but also classism, because like the music before that existed as well and was just more of a popular tradition, even that dates back like millennia before.
Yeah.
With things like ancient Greek poesy and Confucian music, if we go eastwards.
I mean, I've mentioned not only previously on the podcast, but previously today, that I'm the son of a former geography teacher. And you have no idea how annoyed I get at the fact that if you say the words folk music, people will instantly assume you're talking about Bob Dylan and not something like Highland.
Oh, again, I do find it to be part of the mission statement of the show to educate people and to try to show off things that they wouldn't otherwise admit are good, and frankly, video game music as a whole falls into that.
Yeah, and video game music can even do weird things, like, say, take a rock track and use a xylophone as a replacement for the guitar. That is my transition to the next track.
Yeah, no,
Let's do it.
I got that one. That was solid.
That was good.
Yeah,
that was good.
So it's in the name, Treetop Rock, Donkey Kong Country, and it's the old reliable when it comes to marimbas for me.
When in doubt.
Video gaming, at least.
David Wise is really good.
Yeah,
Donkey Kong Country is a really good
this
soundtrack.
one is so fun.
Oh, yeah.
I just love, like, we're making a game about these monkeys, and they're surprisingly intelligent for monkeys. So let's just give them rockabilly with flutes and marimbas as their initial theme. Let's roll with it. And it works. Like, it doesn't come off as insincere. It doesn't come off as unfitting. It works perfectly, and it's fun.
Yeah, it's very dancey like that, and like I said as an introduction, because that's the most shocking part. Like, you take a guitar and you're replacing it with a xylophone. That's not really supposed to work on paper, but it really does in this case.
It really does in this case.
David Wise in the Donkey Kong games has done some incredible stuff that I think we would be calling it experimental music if it wasn't so good, because it's amazing every time.
There's kind of nothing experimental about it. Like, it's still in a standard time signature. It's still in a, it's still in a standard melody structure. It's just swapping an instrument or two.
Yeah, I would argue it's experimental in the sense of breaking the norm with the instrumentation.
The expectations, maybe, of the old school rock genre, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not a standard rock and roll track, but that's kind of one of the video game. It's kind of one of the benefits of this genre. I mean, genre of music. Come on, video game music is not a genre. We've talked about 40 genres today alone. But this category, I guess. It's one of the advantages is that expectations are different, and therefore the result is that they're just used better. You can do more. Let's be honest.
You can break the mold easier.
Yeah. And David Wise was very good at that, and this song really shows that, because, again, it doesn't sound non-traditional in the least, but it's doing weird, cool things.
Yeah, like, if you're just listening to it, it's just very dancey, it's jamming.
Uh-huh. It's just a cool song.
Yeah. With that strange crash-down/distinct part at about a minute, which is a bit of a strange transition, but that kind of grabs your attention.
It is, but it's nothing I'm not used to. Like, you listen to any kind of 70s or 80s prog rock, you're going to hear transitions like this all the time.
Yeah.
And prog rock is a very strong influence among composers of this category, especially the Super Nintendo years.
Absolutely. Like, Uematsu in particular just ate prog rock for breakfast.
Likewise, the wrong kinds of prog rock, but likewise Sakuraba, who we just talked about a few songs ago. But yeah, no, that's also present here. Less so, because it's really just the transition, but it's just one of those things. I guess everyone grew up listening to Yes? I don't know.
There's worse influences.
There are.
I will spare the joke of constantly repeating the word yes as a response to that.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
And next up, we have a song, again, that comes to us from Ranikel in the Atelier series. Again. Seriously? Twice?
I'm shocked.
Yes. I found it too xylophone heavy to ignore. The remake song, anyway, because I found the remake song first when I looked into the game, because it was a recent release, re-release, because it is a remake of the very first Atelier game.
Right.
And I was listening to the main battle theme by curiosity, and it is a very nice, happy tune that we will go a little bit more in detail later, because the story doesn't end at I found that track and thus I put it in, because I ended up being curious after a while. Wait, I am putting this remake track in the playlist. However, if it's a remake, there is an original, and I have played a little bit of the original Atelier Marie, but that was like 5 minutes of going around in my atelier being told I am the worst alchemist ever, moving into the mountains and getting ambushed by bandits and dead. Actually, it's not a final death. It just sends you back to the atelier and you lose a few days. But point being that I didn't really have a lot of time to listen to the original's battle theme. Surely it's also good, right? Wrong.
I thought it was okay. I didn't hate it.
I find the, I guess, harmonica-adjacent instrument very grating.
The instrumentation is questionable. I mentioned earlier that I'm like, this sounds like a Konami sound font. It really does sound like a Konami sound font. But I don't find the core of the song that...
Sorry. You mentioned it sounded like a Konami sound font, and as someone who has played through the entirety of the Suikoden franchise, I fully see this as the battle theme to a Suikoden game if it was a franchise that took itself less seriously.
Yeah.
Because that's the quality of the sound font, especially in the first two Suikoden games as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind this. I think this is fine. I kind of like this one. I do like the remake version better, but I do like it. I don't hate this one.
Yeah, I thought it was all right. Like, not something I will stop to listen to, but I don't hate it.
If it came up on a random playlist, I wouldn't turn it off.
I do find the instrument choice extremely grating. Like, it feels like, you know, when there's like say a certain dog that might be barking, certain sounds that feel like they resonate at exactly the frequency your ears like the least.
Yeah, I get that.
That's kind of that for me. And so that's how I reevaluated, maybe not, but it elevated the remake version of it for me, because it kind of felt like it was taking this old archaeological piece of music and reconstituted it and gave kind of unearthed the good song that was underneath that font of a studio with economy choices of fonts with a fifth of the budget.
I'm still stuck on archaeological.
I mean, it's kind of like that, given the distance. Like, the original was from 97. The remake came out this year.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I should probably mention at some point that it's the main battle theme, Starwind.
That
main battle theme?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the main battle theme.
Okay, now I get why that harmonica would get very annoying.
Yeah.
Okay,
it's not quite Chrono Cross, but it's close.
I don't agree with that at all, but okay.
Oh, well, now you have an idea of how much I'm disliking that, how it resonates with.
Oh yeah, no,
I
get why you. I
get
get why you hate it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Where's my popcorn? The two JRPG guys are fighting over what's the worst battle theme.
Honestly, I got a new one thrown into that arena not too long ago, so almost like it's
impressive.
It's not a bad song. It just got really annoying to listen to after 100 hours of it.
Yeah, I in my current state of mind, I don't actively hate the original version of Starwind, but I can see myself learning to hate it. I do enjoy the remake way better.
Oh yeah, it's a lot cleaner of a song. Yeah. And let's talk about the reason why it's on this list.
Because, unlike the original, it's got some xylophones.
It does.
It accompanies a lot of the main line, and it's like it isn't lead, but it's like its shadow, which is an interesting choice, and I feel like the intention is to almost lighten the mood. Not that it was super heavy to begin with, but it almost gives that feel of not so much playing the game itself as playing with like the action figurines of the game, and it's got that toy-like quality to it. That use of the instrument would feel like the image I have in mind is the Link's Awakening remake for the Switch.
See, this is where I was originally planning to bring up Tom and Jerry, because if I focus only on the xylophone while listening to this track, I can definitely imagine Jerry running around in my head.
Yeah.
I
can definitely see that.
Completely different comparison, because I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, if I didn't know where this was from and you told me this was from a Trails in the Sky spin-off, the battle theme for that, I would believe you instantly. The first version, the OG version, sounds like Konami. This one sounds like Falcom.
Oh yeah, I can see that. That's a fair comparison point. It's got that same kind of plucky energy to it.
Yeah.
Plucky is a good word.
Yeah, I even flat out said, like, I could totally see Estelle Bright in my mind's eye right now.
Oh, absolutely. I think Estelle and Mary would get along.
One of those I'll have to take a word for it moments, because the only thing I know about Marie is her appearance in, I think it was Cross Edge, the very first Compile Heart game back. They just did the buttload of crossovers.
Yeah,
that was not a good video game.
You guys are speaking Greek right now, right? Because I'm not getting anything.
I know very little about the character and how they would compare to a character in a franchise that I have played 2 games of, despite there being like 14 games now, and I really need to start catching up on that one.
Backlogs.
Oh, yeah.
Indeed.
Made so much worse by the Year of the Dragon challenge. I have left so much on the table.
Yeah. Not that you don't have any other recurring activities, such as, say, the acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV.
I still played a little bit. Okay, let's talk about this song, which was my biggest cheat. This was when I gave up. This was when I'm like, this has 2 bars of, you know, and a cool use of xylophone, admittedly, or symphony bells in this case, but it's only a few bars of a very long song, and it's a good transition into the next movement. Like, it's used well, but...
Yeah, I can 100% see and explain its use.
But yeah, no, this was when I had no idea what else to pick, because I was just so flummoxed with all of my attempted choices. And I finally just threw up my hands and went like, I remember them playing this live a few months ago, and they played this, and this is what I'm picking. Just threw my hands up and went deal with it. So I apologize, I'm bad at this.
My point of comparison for this one would be a Volcanic Paradise. I've mentioned that there was this contrast between the smaller being and the golems they used. This one, it seems like they are comparing the immensity of Ul'dah as this capital of trade and the small Lalafels that inhabit it.
Okay.
Yeah, I obviously don't play the game, so I listen to it more or less in a vacuum, except for the video of the guy walking around town that Galen shared. And I enjoyed the use of the instrument as well, just for a different reason, because I think it does a good job of breaking up the whole this is majestic and heroic vibe of the rest of the song.
Yeah.
In order for that to not be overwhelming when it's for a city. And in MMORPGs, you tend to spend quite a lot of time in cities preparing before you go to raids or whatever.
Yeah.
Same is true here.
It does a great job, and the song overall sounds solid, which is par for the course with Final Fantasy XIV, let's be honest.
Yeah, but I will fully admit that, like, I picked one I only recently talked about, and I remember even saying this on the Eorzean Symphony episode. I'm like, I'm going to end up picking this one just because it's here. And unfortunately, that ended up being the case.
Yeah, because for all I'm saying about the explanation, in a lot of ways, it's kind of taking, like, it's the harp's substitute teacher in this song.
The harp's substitute teacher?
Yeah, like, there's a harp that's doing that role of contrasting the immensity of the city to the small inhabitants, and at some point the harp stops and the xylophone adjacent instruments play, and kind of in the same register with the same intent to avoid it being monotonous.
Yeah.
I can safely say I didn't expect anthropomorphized instruments to be on my bingo card for today.
Xylophone-Chan is best girl.
Oh god.
All right. I've already run out of things to say on this song because I talked about it at length fairly during the Eorzean Symphony episode, and you guys brought up basically every point that I meant to bring up about it. So I see no reason to keep harping about on this, or not harping, as the case may be.
Very good one.
I didn't do it on purpose, but I had to roll with it once I said it.
Yes.
It's in our DNA at this point.
You too.
Proud of you.
All right, let's move on to definitely one of the more unique songs here.
That one is from Actraiser Renaissance, and it is the song for Bloodpool and Cassandra stages. And yeah, that one is kind of doing something with its xylophones that like, I like it. I'm not sure why it's here, but I like it.
It's here because it sounds cool, and honestly, sometimes that's all it takes.
It does sound very cool. Yeah.
Like, I remember...
Say, though, if not for
and I think knowing having a few more insights in the surprisingly extremely open, including in English-speaking messages and interviews, Yuzo Koshiro, which is the composer for this track, both the original and the arranger for remake version, he's very much this technician kind of character that likes to toy within the possibilities of the constraints of the Super NES at the time, or other consoles, other fonts afford him. And so I can fully believe that he would add that because it sounded cool.
Yeah.
And he could.
Yeah.
It definitely sounds very, very cool, but I'm gonna be honest, this song, if it didn't have all those more bass heavy horns, it would be incredibly comical and would be another song that would make me think of Tom and Jerry.
Oh, for crying out loud, what is it with you and Tom and Jerry today?
It's the xylophones. You have no idea how often they used those when Jerry was running around.
Apparently I don't, because you're the only one bringing this up, but I did used to watch that cartoon coming up.
Those merry melodies created some associations, looks like. It's interesting. If nothing else, we have discovered something about Eddie.
Yeah.
And isn't that beautiful?
I guess.
But yes, back to Blood Pool.
Yeah, Blood
Which is somehow not the most metal track we will hear. It's not metal at all. In fact, it just had a metal name.
It is a very metal name, but no, the song is pretty traditionally, dark orchestral, but with that, like, very strong mallet section throughout the harmony. Yes. Yeah, I was trying to say a couple times now, we mentioned, like, he did it because it sounds cool. I remember I was doing a class on orchestration in college, and there was just one line that was just giving me trouble. And I did the thing that I still do to this day when I get stuck on something, is I just start hitting random buttons. And that is, in this case, I just went through my contact. That's contact with a K. That's a specific, it's a specific virtual instrument, plugin.
Yeah,
just started selecting instrument presets and just going, okay, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? Found something totally random, and I think it was like some kind of viola knockoff. And I'm like, well, I don't think this is what's meant to go here, but it sounds cool, so that's what I'm using.
Sometimes you just have to throw things at a wall until you see what's...
Yeah, exactly.
As long as one of the buttons you're randomly hitting isn't the nuke button, you should be.
But yes, as for the track in general, beyond its use of the xylophone, it's just very much bombastic, very warlike.
Yeah, which makes sense given ActRaiser.
Yeah, exactly. You hear it on two occasions. One when you are walking across a literal lake of blood on rickety installations full of monsters that charge at you, and the second part is more of a castle, but for this one I could see a better argument for the xylophones because multiple kinds of monsters are skeleton based, and as we will see more in detail in a couple of tracks, I can see the proximity between bone sounds and wood sounds.
You want to talk about old cartoon noises? I hope this doesn't remind you of Tom and Jerry, Eddie.
Why would it?
I don't know. You're the one bringing it up all night.
Okay, I guess. Anyway.
I mean, if you want to make a sound in a Merry Melodies type situation, for a bunch of bones crashing down, there are worse solutions than something like a...
Yeah.
I mean, Xylophone-Chan is known for having done that twice. Danse Macabre and as the fossils from Carnival of the Animals.
Yeah.
Which was, I think, the same melody on both songs. But anyway, final take on the Actraiser track from my end, that I see it less as war, like you guys mentioned. I see it more chaos, like it's not necessarily a chaotic composition.
I can see that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like trying to represent chaos without just being noisy music.
Yeah.
Which also fits the game, because the entire premise is that you're ending the chaos and restoring order to the world. So, you know.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair take. Oh, for something like we've mentioned the wooden part of these types of instrument. We've mentioned the bone part, which we'll go more in detail later. But for now, we've also mentioned the more crystalline part, and this next track is all that.
Oh, it is extremely glassy.
Oh, it is. So, Scala's theme, or Scala's theme, however you want to pronounce it.
I think
Chrono
it's
Trigger.
Scala? Question mark? I don't know. Yes, that theme.
Yeah, I've heard like a dozen different pronunciations. I've stopped trying.
That's probably wise.
My first note for this song is just, did you know the official soundtrack album had arrangements as part of it? I sure didn't.
I did, but I've never really listened to them. In part because even then the recording wasn't great. I know later mix albums were like actually recorded. This one's still seemingly using samples, good ones, ish, good for the Super Nintendo years.
And it's weird because they did that for Actraiser 2, the original, that is, but that was mostly as a way to promote the SNES and say, look at how good the sound of the console is compared to the NES. It's not actually sounding like that, but it's evoking something closer to that, because Actraiser was a title that was very close to launch. Chrono Trigger was not.
No, that was pretty deep in.
Yeah, but I guess this was more an intent for that dream team to stretch their legs.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's kind of not the opposite, but a bit of a mirror of what Actraiser did, because Actraiser was an early title, so it was showing off the power of the console. This was a late title, so it was comfortable with the power of the console. And so
that's fair.
We knew how to use that. At least that's how I see it.
That's a good version of that.
I have no argument with that. That sounds good to me.
And as far as video game tracks that sound ethereal and otherworldly and mysterious, this is up there. Like, they really did use the SNES to its best capabilities.
It's very meditative. Maybe even more so than the meditation of many years.
I would argue
saying something. It's got meditation right in the name.
I would argue they're roughly the same. I mean, they're two very different composers trying to evoke two different emotions. This one's definitely a lot more somber.
Yeah, it has this fragility, this aspect of kind of delving back into memories, not all of them happy ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it definitely has a touch of melancholy, which ties to the character's storyline. And also, a detail that I really enjoy is how I'm not sure which instrument of the xylophone family is being used, but whichever it is, the fact that its rhythm is constant and just does not break or change at all throughout the entire song almost reminds me a little bit of Clockwork as well, which fits with Chrono Trigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, this one has, in this case, definitely in the vibraphone family, very front and center. It's the main hook. And it never really goes away.
The way, Eddie, you mentioned the clockwork pack makes me think not quite of clockwork itself, but more of because of its rigid base on purpose. Maybe something like the destiny, this idea of predestination in this time-traveling game, which makes sense as a theme, and thus combined with fragility, there's like an idea to try to change things around, and not necessarily being successful about it. That's why it's got that tragic vibe to it, I feel.
I can
This
see
mix
that.
of trying to evolve within this very rigid frame.
Yeah, I can definitely see that as well. But I honestly, I love when we come with different interpretations, because to me that's what art is all about.
That it is,
So-
my friend.
Yeah, the main way I kind of interpret this in my mind is sort of like a not a big grandfather clock or anything, more like a wristwatch or something with very delicate clockwork in there. That's more or less like what I'm thinking of, not like a Castlevania clock tower.
Nice. And now I'm picturing Shala just casually, or Scala, casually walking around with one of those blocky Casio watches.
Okay.
Honestly, considering all the time travel, she might have a smartwatch.
Well, that's terrifying.
Yeah, connected to what, though? She doesn't have a cell phone.
Have you seen the Ocean
And that's
Palace?
why she gets Lavos involved.
Okay, this is getting into the weirdest fanfiction territory we could possibly
This
get
is getting
into.
out of hand.
Let's not continue this train of thought, I think. Let's just...
Excellent.
Yeah.
I will just note that you just made the mistake of talking to a guy known for his puns and jokes and a guy known for writing comedy stories. But she doesn't have anything to connect, though. What about that?
I will let you
You
figure that out on your own time.
You invited our creativity and our ability to make absurdist comments.
You make me regret knowing you guys sometimes.
I know that you love us deep inside.
I do, but I still
very
sometimes
deep
regret
inside.
knowing you.
Relatable.
Don't I feel loved
Well, then,
now?
do we have more on Shala's theme?
Other than that, Chrono Trigger is still Yasunori Mitsuda's masterpiece.
Yeah, it's still one of the best games. Period.
Mm-hmm.
No need to qualify it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason I like to make the joke of I don't like JRPGs, I like Chrono Trigger.
Didn't you play through the
It's a
entire
game that
Suikoden franchise?
You're assuming I like all of Suikoden games. I've played all of them. Suikoden 4 can go die in a fire.
I know that feeling. I know that feeling. All right. And with that, let's move on to surprisingly my favorite track of the day.
Surprisingly?
I mean, yeah, we're just talking about Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, there are some heavyweights, and then there's old friend Mick Gordon going in and say, you know what I like? Bones. I'm going to make Bone sound because there's this Bone character. And then he did. Literally, I believe it's the track for which he passed instruments through a human skull to give them more depth.
Yeah, I read something in the YouTube comments about him using an actual bone on this piece.
Yeah. That track being Spinal's theme, Warlord, from the King of Killer Instinct rerun for the Xbox 360, I want to say?
I think this was Xbox One.
That sounds right.
I think this was an early Xbox One, because it wasn't Series, but I think it was after 360.
Oh yeah, because that was the Kinect era. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, the newer Killer Instinct, and he decided salties for cowards, bones make bone sounds.
Yeah, ribcage xylophone all the way. Like, you want to talk about reminding you of old cartoons, they used to do this one a lot, and here it is played terrifyingly straight, and it is wonderful.
Yeah. He took a page from Spooky Scary Skeleton and added some elements of that into the original Spinal theme, and then added some more energy to it.
This song's really great.
And ominousness. And throw it all in a blender. It's great.
There are not many composers who could get away with this.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Galen mentioned one of the comments, and I think it's worth noting we might not have the very same video by the time we post this episode, because we try to find versions that give credit to the proper artist and the money goes to them. But the video that we used to listen to the song had a few very interesting comments, and one that I like to highlight is I think the second highest voted comment. An ancient Babylonian who became a Caribbean pirate with a theme song sung in Swedish. That's Mick Gordon for you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it kind of emphasizes why we like those sorts of characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, it's a skeleton pirate. I love both of those things. I want to fight as him or against him.
I like my grounded games as much as I like my absurdist ones. What can I say?
Next.
The thing is, Killer Instinct, much like its soundtrack, really straddles the line between those two in a way that it's almost surprising how well it works. Again, this is not something that should, but it does.
I had my breakthrough on Killer Instinct with when someone, I think it was Maximilian Dude, that mentioned that, in a sense, this is Western Darkstalkers.
That just clicked with me.
That track.
I know, right?
Huh.
And much like Darkstalkers, this is a franchise I hope gets another entry one day.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Like, they went surprisingly close recently because it was the 10th year of this release, and they released a new patch for it.
Nice.
And I hope this leads to even more in the future, because that game felt great.
And if it does, I hope it comes with more Mick Gordon instead of Cell Dweller.
That would be indeed great. No shade on Cell Dweller. He does a lot of great work.
I didn't mind what I heard off of, what was that, season 3 or 4, when he got involved?
Season 3.
Yeah. I didn't mind what I heard. I mean, it's not this, though.
Yeah.
Like, this is kind of a high bar to clear.
I mean,
Exactly.
it's not like Cell Dweller did a bad job at doing the soundtrack. He just isn't Mick Gordon.
Yeah. And I love how we managed 2 out of our 3, like, memes. We got Sakuraba, we got Gordon. All we're missing is Jason Charles Miller at this point. No, that wasn't a transition. We just got 2 of our 3, like, Music Arcade memes.
And as a last note before transitioning to the next song, I will just say that if we were to go for proper root word-based name for instrument, the ribcage xylophone would be an osteophone, except that term is actually used more for bone conduction devices.
I just, this is the one song on this list that I forgot I was actually trying to actively listen, and I just found myself jamming.
Oh yeah, and the the percussion are present enough that you don't need to be that active to know, oh yeah, bones.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very obvious what he was going for, and it was very cool how it was used.
Going back to that comment I made about Camille Saint-Jean, this is pretty much what he was trying to do, but years have the years have changed, the times have changed, and this is Mick Gordon actually going through with that bone sound.
Mm-hmm.
You're right, the Mick Gordon is the Camille Saint-Saëns of our days.
I don't know how to
I'm
process
just being
that.
silly.
No,
Well, let's not. How about not? How about we instead move on to another game entirely? Great. Desert Battle. Dragon Force. Let's go. You like Dragon Force, don't you, Galen?
The game, not the people.
Yes. Yes.
For transparency, this is Dragon Base Force.
Yes, this is its
There's
own
a space
thing.
there.
This is
this is
a
fine.
Critically.
fairly obscure Sega Saturn strategy RPG that I just adore. Actually, I think you could almost qualify it as a real-time strategy game, but it does not play anything like what you're thinking when I say those words. This is a song from a PlayStation 2 remake of said.
Just to validate what you've mentioned, what I'm picturing is something like a tactics, like an ogre battle.
Ogre Battle's closer than, say, real-time strategy usually is like Command & Conquer. Ogre Battle's closer, but even that skews pretty far from it.
All right.
I'm thinking of Suikoden 5's RTS segments, but I don't think Galen knows how they play, so whatever.
I'm afraid I don't. So a funny story behind this. I was originally going for a completely different theme from Dragon Force. That in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, that's absolutely mallet struck. And then I listen to it, and it is not. It is beeping. And I'm like, this is just flat out synth. I can't use this. I can't even pretend to use this. This isn't close enough. And so I'm like, all right, I'm just going to hit a few random buttons on the Dragon Force soundtrack, and let's see if we find anything. And magically, I found this one. And I wasn't expecting it to be actually that cool, because I mentioned before, it is very weird and unusual to use the melody line, have it be mallet struck, but that is a case where this has actually occurred. And while it is a remix, it's a very fancy one as a result of that. I don't know if I like it for deserts, but I like how it sounds a lot.
Yeah, it doesn't have that desert feel, but it really emphasizes more that kind of military march in which ambushes could spring up at any moment.
Right.
Yeah,
that lead is very strong. It's not what I have first in mind when speaking of xylophone adjacent instrument. It is mallet struck, but that is like on the line of what I would consider close enough for this episode.
I don't know. I feel like it's a lot closer than, admittedly, one of my original picks that I ended up striking for Meditation many years. But,
Yeah. It has a bit of a different feel, but maybe that's just due to how, like, even if it's the remake, it still seems like it wants to capture the texture of the original Mega Drive.
yeah. Mega Drive? It was Saturn, not Mega Drive.
Mega Drive? Oh, it was Saturn. It was Saturn then.
It was Saturn.
My bad. And that argument doesn't stand. But
yeah, no, I will fully admit the sound font on this one is bafflingly, like, this is the PlayStation 2 era. This should not sound like this.
It is very Sega.
It is very Sega. I don't know. I was surprised to find this one. Because the song that I was originally going to play was the Apostle Battle theme, and it had a very specific intro there. And that intro was like the world's worst synth piano. It was like, this is just beeping at me. This is an oscillator that may sound like a piano if you squint at it really hard. So I could not use that at all. Like, there was no way to get away with that. And I'm so lucky I managed into this one because this is actually a really cool use of this instrument.
Yeah.
Using it as the melody line, which is something that has not actually been done. Scala's theme came the closest, but even then, it still got taken over by the, like, Arabic horn section very quickly.
Yeah, I think, more than a good use of the instrument is also made for a surprisingly effective way to add an ominous vibe to the whole song.
Yeah, there's a mysteriousness here that this instrument doesn't usually bring to the forefront that I think this accomplishes. I think you hit the nail on the head on that one.
Yeah, it's. I would say it's a song that I wouldn't associate with the title Desert Battle if it wasn't written.
Yeah, no, this does not sound like a desert at all.
Song. But it definitely... This is a song that does give me, like, cavern vibes.
I mean, admittedly, here's the weird thing. Like, it's called Desert Battle, and it does play in the desert, but it also plays inside keeps. So if you're in a battle inside keeps, this is a song that plays. I think that's what it's trying to evoke, despite it being also the desert theme, because this is the same...
Yeah, and in that context, the kind of echoey feel to it makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but only in that context, because it does still play in the desert. And I'm just like, this just sounds weird at this point.
Good song, weird context.
Weird context.
Wonder if it was some sort of bass limitation on the disc or whatever, but cool song.
I couldn't begin to tell you. Sega Saturn is notorious for how difficult it was to program for, so it could be.
I have heard the horror stories.
And this game is jam-packed. It's so big that a save file would not actually fit on the internal storage of a Saturn. You needed an external to save at all.
Wow.
It's one of two Sega Saturn games that I'm like, this is the reason you have a Sega Saturn for. It's that one and this really obscure game by Climax called Dark Savior, which I think I've talked about once or twice on this show.
You have.
Those are the two...
Looking at screenshots of it, I have a point of comparison now.
Oh, really?
For what it makes me think of. It makes me think of Dynasty Warriors real-time strategy side game Kessen 2.
Okay.
Which was for the PS2, and it had a different kind of way to control, but when you were locked in an engagement, it looks like it's kind of close to what this game revolves around.
The combat, this is a lot more simplistic than the Kessen series, but I see it. I see what you're going for with this, yeah.
All
There's
right.
I see the connective tissue.
Excellent. Then my eyes do not deceive.
Yeah, so I'm just sort of imagining a world where we get a remake of this game with a real, like, orchestrated soundtrack. And I'd love to hear how they do this song, and hopefully they keep the xylophones in, because that would be really neat.
That would be really neat. The xylophone can do a lot of different and weird things.
It can.
I'm sure we're talking about it in a broad sense as this family of instruments, but it can do almost opposite vibes to it. It can be very much in the background, or it can be flexed as a weird lead, and certainly not a bad one. It's surprisingly versatile.
Mm-hmm.
Get mallets, hit stuff.
And now that we've talked about the game in the games we used to play, let's talk about the ones we are playing. How about some Music Arcade? Now playing.
I don't have the jingle for that. Learn.
Don't worry about it. That's the one I want to replace more than our main theme, to be perfectly honest with you. That one has never quite clicked with me, but it was free. So.
That's fair. Anyway, let's start now playing by bringing the mood down instantly.
Yeah, this is some news you kind of begged us to bring up.
Yeah, so one of the games I've been playing less than usual for reasons is, of course, Destiny 2. And if you follow gaming news, you probably are already aware of the Bungie layoffs, and we don't usually talk about that sort of stuff because we are not a gaming news podcast. So if you want details on the business side of things, check out Jason Schreier's and Paul Tassie's coverage.
Mm-hmm.
But we're bringing this up because two longtime composers have been hit by those layoffs. One of them is Michael Sechrist, a bit of a niche name. If you're into Destiny, you love the guy. If you're not into Destiny, you probably don't even know he exists. I
didn't even know he existed.
Well, you actually kind of did, but forgot, because he was the main composer behind a song that I brought up in the podcast in the past called Deep Stone Lullaby.
Exactly.
But the other composer that got affected is actually a big name that a lot of people who are into video game music should know. That is Michael Salvatore, who is one half of the composers for, I think, the first 4 Halo games, including the iconic theme. A theme that is still used to this day, even by the games made by 343.
I mean, you can't get rid of it. You just can't. Don't try.
Yeah. And I mean, even in Destiny, I've brought up twice the song Battle Ready from the Lightfall expansion, and Salvatore was the main composer for that one. So dude's known for doing some great work. So yeah, just part of the reason bringing this up.
News for Destiny 2, sure.
Yeah, I'd say for kind of gaming in general. But yeah, the main reason for bringing this up is layoffs suck, and even if you can't confirm too many details, we are in solidarity with the people affected, even if we just mentioned only the composers.
Yeah.
And for those curious about their careers, Sechrist appears to be going freelance based on his LinkedIn profile. Salvatore, we don't know. It's possible Salvatore might retire. He's almost 70, but we don't know. So everything is up in the air for that, I'm afraid.
I hope, like, if he does retire, that his retirement is nice invested, because going freelance is risky when it comes to that. I've been a freelance for basically ever, and I've been more or less responsible for my own retirement fund from the beginning, and thin months, it gets real tempting to withdraw from that just to live. So this is always a very scary situation, and this actually happened. You mentioned on the Discord, it'd be weird if Square did that. Square did this like 10 years ago. They unloaded everybody, every composer they had. Made them all go freelance, continued to work with most of them.
Yeah.
But this is unfortunately a thing that happens, and it's always the composers too. Like, this is something that the suits decide to unload something. It's always this category, and that just pisses me off. It's this and it's quality control.
It's like there's an incompatibility between the business mind in suits and the more openly creative side of things.
I think, just for full transparency, it's worth noting that neither Bungie nor Sony, who owns a majority stake, have said anything on the layoffs. All we know comes from either unnamed insiders, which you can see those posts with Jason Schreier's and Paul Tassie's coverage, or actual ex-employees who left and talked about it on Twitter. So we know it wasn't just the art department that was hit. Like, pretty much everything was hit by the layoffs.
Yeah.
But the reason we are keeping it to these two names is because we are a music podcast, so we don't want to just go on for hours talking about this, because boy, can I. The feeling of rage is strong. But anyway.
Yeah.
On a tangential topic, we would be remiss also not to mention the departure of the present admin, owner, etc. of OC Remix, DJ Pretzel, has stepped down on his own volition because he, and I quote, no longer feel I have the bandwidth to do these roles justice and to not only maintain but advance the mission of both projects.
Yeah.
A very personal decision, and he keeps visibly it's a departure on good terms, you know.
Yeah, this wasn't a layoff. This wasn't anything angry. He's been doing this for 20 years, and he's just like, it's time. It's time to be done with this. I can't blame the guy for a second.
Even if you love something dearly, you can feel yourself spinning your wheels. Or just wanting to try something else.
Oh, yeah.
And kudos to him for being able to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for, having done an OC remix. Like an entire OC remix thing. It's been there for a long time.
Yeah.
And it has been very good for video game music and especially video game fan music.
It absolutely has. And there's a lot of guys, much like how like Voice Actors Alliance got a lot of the big dub stars of today in the door. This started a lot of careers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a very big and important thing that he made. And, I remember not too long ago, actually, after our April Fool's episode, this OC remix and how long this has been going on came up. I remember specifically, I mentioned the Esther's Dreams album, and a song off of that. And that album was 10 years old at the time. And this guy mentions Esther in his retirement post. And he's like, my daughter's learning trombone now. And I'm like, you did that Lullaby album when she was nothing 10 years ago. And now you're like talking about a future collab with her. And I'm like, time does march on. I get why you think it's time to be done with this thing.
It does. So yeah, wish him all the best.
Absolutely.
And the good news is he's doing it on his own terms, and the website will remain.
Yep.
Exactly.
Like, this is the exact opposite of what we just heard before.
Long may it endure.
Yep. I don't want to imagine an internet without OC Remix.
Neither do I. But going back to the usual for this segment of the show, the other games I've been playing.
Yay!
Diablo 4. Got a new season, cool gameplay stuff, cool quality of life improvements, no new music, so not much to say here.
Okay.
There's one game that might be one of my favorite puzzle games ever right now. I finished it almost just one sitting. It's just 7 hours long, more or less, called Chants of Sennaar. Folks might have seen it on YouTube. There's a lot of people doing Let's Plays of it.
Okay.
It's a cool little game, essentially about trying to translate different languages. And you have 5 different languages to play with. So it's more about figuring out what each symbol means, because those are pictographic languages. But it's a really cool game. It forces you to use deduction skills almost like a detective game. Also a passion project by 2 French developers, and when they got picked up by a publisher, they suddenly had the money to hire a freelance composer. And the playlist for this episode has a little bit of an audio insight video posted by the publisher, because honestly couldn't find a soundtrack available online, and I didn't feel like linking to someone other than the team behind the game in this case, because it's a small team that suddenly had a hit. But yeah, cool game. The soundtrack is very folkish. It's very much about differentiating the 5 different cultures.
And I really want to try it at some point, because I like my etymology, so the idea of something that revolves on translation or likes it reminds me of that book in Ni no Kuni, where it was written in another language, but had not only it wasn't just code, it had like context-dependent letters and the like. Fun time.
Yeah, I heavily recommend this, especially if you're into linguistics as just a special interest like I am. It's great.
Yes, especially.
And finally, this one I haven't been playing too much as of the last few weeks, but I have touched a little bit on it, so that counts. And that's my excuse to bring Down by the River from Baldur's Gate 3, the song that will get stuck in your mind forever if you are like me, in the sense of you create a crap ton of new characters just because you can't decide on what to play. This plays in the character creation.
I'm not convinced it's a good song, but boy howdy's it an earworm.
It
is. Especially once the bike goes up.
I've already seen covers of that go by too.
Oh yeah, this really caught on. I think the main melody is kind of the same as the main theme of Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah.
But
I'm like making a song with lyrics for the character creation where you have all of that brain space already occupied by what you want to make work for your characters. It was a good call.
Was it?
Because normally it's a very anti-space.
I don't know. I feel like that's just like a choice is what that is, but okay.
Yes.
Pretty well, I'd say.
I would have to actually play the game.
Choice I like.
Yeah, I would have to actually play the game to really see that, and I don't really have an interest in playing it, so I'm not sure. It's not a decision I would have made. It's not a decision I would have made.
Yeah, from what I understand, it wasn't the original decision either for them. It just kind of happened during early access, and people loved it, so it stuck.
Okay.
Because they had early access for the first act for the longest time.
Yeah, I'm like, isn't this game like 3 years old? Like, why is everyone playing it now? I'm guessing that's what happened then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it stayed in early access for about a year, maybe 2, and the full release came this year.
Got it.
But yeah, it's like a lot of people have been saying online. The game is about you dealing with a parasite in your brain, and the character creation screen has an earworm like this. That's fitting.
Ooh, good one.
That is fitting. Yeah.
The only way it could be more fitting was if it were ominous, but then it would be overwhelming.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
anyway, that's
I will go next, as all I have to bring is terror and nightmares.
Excellent.
So, the one good soundtrack recently, Yakuza Like a Dragon. I finished the main game of that game. I will discuss that at length in the Year of the Dragon podcast, but I did just want to say that after listening to the soundtrack, my opinion of the soundtrack is borderline negative.
Oh.
Like, it's not bad, but it's not as good as the others, and so much of it is context dependent. There's one song in particular that when I heard it in-game, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is cool. And then when I listened to it just this morning, just listen to it without any of the game anything going on, I was almost embarrassed by it.
Huh.
Wow.
Well, looking forward to that discussion.
Yeah. Okay, now for the actual games. First, hey look, it's Arknights again. I have a shockingly generic boss theme, for the Chapter 12 boss, and for 3 out of its 4 appearances, namely the final regular stage and then 3 out of the 4 bonus stages, it's fine. But the last bonus stage is the reason this song will haunt my nightmares for eternity. I had to use a guide video, and even then it took me borrowing ultra meta units, power leveling some of my existing units, and like 3 days of attempts to clear. This thing was a brute force nightmare.
Yeah, and that's not really the usual fare for Arland.
No, every other stage, even ones I didn't like throughout this chapter, have been what it usually is. It's puzzles. It's trying to find
and this time the puzzle is hammer.
The puzzle is hammer. Yeah, there's no way to not brute force yourself out of this. This was a very poor design decision, and thus this song ends up with a negative connotation in my mind, because this is all I can think of when I hear it now. It's just pounding my face against H12-4.
Honestly, taking a listen to the song, it's a bit weird for Arknights as well, like the song itself, because it's not bad. It's well made, but it's Arknights is a game that usually it comes off as either very creative or at least so well produced and so well composed that you can't help but stop and listen to it.
Yeah.
This one isn't that. Like, it's not bad, but it isn't that either.
It's fairly generic.
It is. You are in a boss fight. The theme, TM.
Yeah, it really is, which feels really weird, because they don't usually do this. I remember putting on, like, the war shanty from Stoltavera Novice, or the weird, like, vocal jazz track from Il Siracusano. And here we are, the Chapter 12 boss theme, which is actually a really important boss theme in the context of the story, and it just gets this really good but fairly generic and not very interesting kind of music. It's not really swinging for the fences like the soundtrack tends to.
Unfortunate.
Yep. Little disappointing there. The other thing I did was my Halloween special, which I'm going to run back. I think we're going to do a second Halloween special to watch the taste of this one out of my mouth. And that is Slain Back from Hell. This soundtrack was composed by, I don't have his name in front of me, but one of the guys from Celtic Frost. And it reminds me why I don't like Celtic Frost all that much. All of their songs sound the same.
Kurt Victor Bryan, according to the notes you put on Discord.
Sure, that guy. Yeah, I actually have very little to say about this, despite it being ostensibly death metal.
Yeah, this is metal guitars, the theme TM.
Yeah.
To reuse the joke from Arknights.
I mean, unfortunately, that's true. We'll be talking about this game come my best and worst lists, and no guesses as to which one, which side this is gonna fall under. But
I'm so curious now.
Right? But yeah, no, this soundtrack was, like, arguably the thing the game did the best at. It was even still, like, this forgettable.
Yeah, I played the game a little ages ago. If I recall correctly, Rai from our community actually gifted it to me at the time. I was unemployed, I believe. And it's a bit clunky. It basically got a lot of good PR at the time because it was an indie game where people didn't like it, so the dev actually took it off, worked on it, and then put it back at I believe at a lower price tag.
And with the Back from Hell title to reference that event.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what that meant.
So yeah, it got a lot of good press at the time, so I was very curious about it. But I don't know if it's just my setup, but for some reason it didn't. When I was trying to figure my controller layout, the D-pad was sort of glitched, for the lack of a better term. Like left to right, I couldn't assign that to movement. And I'm the kind of guy who prefers to play 2D games with the D-pad rather than the analog stick. So,
which is the correct choice.
Yeah,
How
it was
dare
a
you?
very awkward experience for me. I didn't play very long because of that.
I beat it. I beat the game. I have very... Again, there will be opinions.
You have beaten a video game.
I have beaten a video game. It was certainly... It was... Boy, this video game sure does exist, doesn't it?
It was a video game that you have beaten.
It is a video game that I have beaten.
I was about to say your opinion of the game appears to be this is one of the most video games of the time.
It is. It really is. It is video game, the video game.
It is the Revenant Wing of platformer.
I heard Revenant Wings was actually pretty good.
Oh, wasn't that the...
Isn't that the FF12 spin-off?
Wait, no, I was thinking about the... a tactical RPG of all time.
Oh.
You know, the one with... where they have released a surprising amount of them and they're all existent.
Mercenaries.
Mercenary V.
Yeah, Revenant Wings is the FF12 spin-off, and I've heard that's actually pretty good.
Yeah, that would make more sense. Yeah, no, I mean, it is the mercenary wings of platformers, man.
Yeah. I mean, I would go to bat more for Mercenaries than I would for this, but yeah.
All right. On my end, multiple games that I have already talked about before, or that didn't have much of a remarkable soundtrack, so I won't bring it up in detail. I will mention that on the Nintendo Power Hour situation, I have gotten WarioWare Move It. I haven't really paid attention to the soundtrack much because it is a very active game, and my shoulders are hurting good, but it's incredibly fun, so that's already a good time.
It's WarioWare. That tends to happen.
Yes. Indeed. And it's a very good one. It's very much in line with the Wii one, and it does that great. But when it comes to music, the one thing that comes to mind is, of course, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, which is pretty amazing on that front, and generally very good.
Yeah, I heard this soundtrack. I'm surprised it didn't actually make the main list, because it's also very mallet-heavy.
Yeah, exactly. I have enough xylophone power in me to have not only done like half those tracks we ended up picking, but also added more xylophone to the now playing.
Good job!
I am one with the xylophone, and the xylophone is one with me. Plonk, plonk, plonk.
But
yeah, no, all that aside, joking aside, it's a game that not only has good tracks, but that uses the music and the sound extremely well. Like, on one of the first levels, you have one of the wonder effects, which when the game gets weird, in which the fire flower, the piranha plants, actually do a musical number while you are on an auto-scroller. And so the piranha plants walk, which is already weird, and start singing. Every single one piranha plant is assigned to a part of the song. If you fireball the piranha plant, that part of the song is missing. Not only that, but if there's also music note blocks on the ground. And so, if you listen to piranha plants on parade on, say, a YouTube upload, you might notice that it's weird because there's a lack of percussion. That is because the percussion is added in the note blocks you are working on.
Huh.
And so the percussion is different for the way each player walks around and jump. It does a lot of fun things. Every level tracks also has a different version that is more horn heavy for when you are transformed into an elephant version of your character.
As one does.
It goes places. And yeah, that is a game that demands respect.
Okay. I also just want to point out
it does sound like a very fun evolution of other kind of attempts at playing with the music that Nintendo has done in the past with the Mario games. Like, I believe it was New Super Mario Bros. Had the enemies pretty much dancing to the music, and Mario World had
and
Yoshi.
If we go exactly, which added more of a percussion, but yeah, and this one goes in that lineage.
I just want to point out the actual end of the No One Expects the Spanish Inquisition sketch that we just did, because finally when the audience started expecting it, then you smash cut to the Spanish Inquisition trying to get on a bus and get to the skit. We basically just had that with your xylophone joke today, because I actually presented on stream all right, go ahead and play it, and you just didn't. You said it and you just left it hanging there, and I'm just like, you just totally pulled a Monty Python on me. Good job.
That was because I wasn't attentive, but I will accept that it was funny nonetheless.
Sometimes that happens. Yeah, there it is.
That xylophone sounds.
I was done talking about my playing.
And with that, I think that is all the time we have for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. We finally got this one in the books. Hooray. As always, you can...
It is real!
It is real! It exists! Now let's hope my computer doesn't explode before I edit this thing. As always, you can find...
Don't jinx it.
I will try. As always, you can find the playlist in the description, talking about the songs we were referencing today, and, of course, how to contact us as well. Thank you all. We would love to hear some feedback, as always. And we will see you guys next episode. Have a good one, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See you next time.